is Kathy Hirsch. I'm interviewing Ruth Braddock on December the 11th, 2015 for the Pinecrest Pioneers Archive. Ruth, your life is so interesting. I think we should just start from the beginning. You said you're from upstate New York. Where were you born and who were your parents?
I was born in upstate New York to Iva Dix Fenner and Cyril Fenner. He was a teacher, she was a concert pianist, and they were wonderful Christian people, and they had 4 kids, and we survived living on the St. Lawrence River before the seaway was cut through. We used to make igloos and poured ice over them, and I taught my 8th grade kids how to dance when we had our first tea dance in elementary school. So I've been teaching, I think, all my life, and there's so many things I don't know even where to start.
Well, your education was upstate New York?
Yes, upstate New York, and then I graduated from Bainbridge High School, which is near Schenectady, New York, and I was at my high school when D-Day occurred. We were practicing for a play, and the announcement came over the PA system that the Japanese had attacked our fleet, and the whole fleet was right there, unfortunately.
Oh, you're talking about Pearl Harbor Day.
Pearl Harbor days, yes.
You were in high school.
Yes, I was in high school, and so everybody ran home because they were devastated. They couldn't believe that, and so that prompted me. My father had been World War I veteran. My brother was already in the service. I decided I would join the service, but I was too young. So I had 2 years at Syracuse University. Used to go to school in snow suits because it was so cold up there. And that's why I live in Florida. And I went to Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia, to get my basic training. And it was a wonderful experience. And when I was finished, I was actually in the Transportation Corps with all of these other WACs. And when I went to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, which is the port of debarkation, where we used to give the boys steak dinners on the way over and kissed them goodbye. They came back in the same place, but they were wounded in baskets or on crutches. And I wanted to be a chaplain's assistant.
You decided that after you got there?
No, I signed up to be a chaplain's assistant. So when I went into the captain's place, and he told me that he had never heard of a lady chaplain's assistant, I told him that I was going to go home if I can't be what I signed up to be. Smart aleck, you know. But it was good. He assigned me to the regional hospital, and I was with the chaplain's corps all the time. I was there. In fact, if you Google it, my friend was looking at the Camp Kilmer escapades, and he saw Ruth Fenner and Liz Passaic sang for President Roosevelt. They sang a duet.
Did you really?
It was me, yeah. So
were you nervous?
No, I wasn't nervous. No.
You were.
Because we sang a lot. We sang. I wrote the church bulletin. I played the organ, and I did a lot of things. In fact, I learned a real good trick. Did you ever plug a watermelon with altar wine?
No.
Well, it's pretty good.
So you learned a few tricks in upstate
Yeah,
New
I
York.
learned a few tricks. I, as I said before, I got married back in Bainbridge to a male nurse, and we were on our honeymoon when the government called and said that all married whacks could get out of the service. So I got out of the service immediately and went to work. Like Rosie the Riveter, remember her? Well, I did that at Syracuse before I got into the service for one summer also. And then we moved to Miami.
When you were married.
We were married, and we came to Miami, and that's the only place that my husband ever wanted to go to. So his mother and his aunt had both graduated from the University of Miami. So we came here, and I got my bachelor's and my master's at the university while we lived on 20th Street, what they used to call 20th Street, which was part of a barracks out on the airport. And they had big long buildings, and they chopped 3 apartments out of that one building. And we had kerosene stoves and ice box, and so if you let the water melt too long, you were in trouble. And so on infinitum, I had 4 kids in 4.5 years, trying
Were
to
you
catch
still
up.
living in the barracks?
No, thank God. No, we made it out. We lived 6601 Southwest 63rd Court, behind the University of Miami, and continued our education. And
There were a lot of GIs there.
oh yes, a lot of GIs, and they used to get the ducks when their GI Bill ran out at the end of the month. Ducks off the lake.
And use them for food.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So the ducks knew at the end of the month they better hide.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And so, in other words, the money wasn't really adequate
No,
to
but
feed
it was
the month.
a tremendous help. It was a tremendous help. And I believe in taking care of the vets when they come out of the service. They need help, and they deserve help. We can't forget them. And some of them paid the ultimate price, but those people who you see at the VA downtown are rolling around in wheelchairs and getting their medical attention there. And you start to say?
To go back to Camp Kilmer and your job as a chaplain's assistant.
Yeah.
Were you the first woman, therefore, to ever have been a chaplain's assistant?
Well, I might have. I don't know. I've never heard of any other women's chaplain in the service ever. But there could have been. I don't know about the world. I don't know about the USA or how soon they picked up on that.
You saw then a lot of wounded soldiers coming back.
Oh yeah, especially from the Battle of the Bulge. Yeah.
They came in droves after that, I imagine.
Right, yeah.
Were you overwhelmed?
Well, you couldn't afford to be overwhelmed. You had to keep moving. You had to keep talking. You had to keep helping them, because we would walk the corridors in the hospital with a chaplain, and each one you would talk to keep up their morale and all. But some of them, for instance, couldn't see, so we wrote letters to the parents for them, and it was very satisfying service, actually.
still, it must have taken some emotional toll to deal with all of that trauma.
Well, that's true. You have to get hardened to it, I guess, just like everything else. And at least these guys were here on the US of A land, and they were so happy. They were happy GIs. They were wonderful. They'd made it back.
You then lived with presumably a lot of veterans when you were going to school at UM. And there was a massive amount of
Right.
veterans going to school there
Right.
then. Was there any help for them in the way of mental health facilities? There's the VA for if they had physical injuries, but were there any kind of self-help groups where they could talk?
I don't really recall. Maybe having been married, I was isolated from the general one-on-one veterans. I don't know.
I just wondered if maybe
Yeah.
you were aware of stresses that people went through in readjusting
Yeah.
to civilian life.
Well, I see more of it downtown now in Miami because I get veterans care there and very good veterans care. When I first came back to Miami, they did not include women in their service. But eventually, and I don't remember what year that was, they put a newspaper article in the paper, and I saw that I would be able to get veterans care there, and I went right down. Now, it's been very good. They've taken excellent care of me. I have a fantastic female doctor.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that you moved to Pinecrest in 1958.
Right.
What prompted you to move here?
Well, I had to have a swimming pool, and I had gone to a party at somebody's house, and they had a swimming pool. And I thought that was fabulous, and I said, well, I like that too. And we had just, I had dreamed about in my dreams, I had dreamed about a house in Coral Gables that came up on in the newspaper that was incredibly good ad. And I called my husband at the university and said, bring your wallet, we're going to lunch, and we're going to buy this house. And we did buy the house without even walking around the perimeter of the outside. We were so fortunate that the realtor kept away all of these other realtors who were trying to get it in between times. But we did get it. So we bought the house so fast that we even...
This house?
No, not this house.
Okay.
The one in Coral Gables on Marmore Avenue. We bought it with the Jell-O in the refrigerator and rubbers in the garage, and it was wonderful. So we used that to make a down payment here in Pinecrest when this house came available. And I had to have a swimming pool. I had been teaching for a long time with the Red Cross at Venetian Pool and other places. And so I said, well, I could teach right here. And one day when we moved in with my 4 kids and all of the kids around here, lots of kids then, there was a 2-year-old standing in my pool when I was out walking around to see the construction. And I nearly had a conniption because she didn't know how to swim. So I said, okay, all you guys, come on, we're going to teach you swimming. And that's how I started swimming and water saving all these kids.
So this became part of your career then?
It did, definitely. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm 92 and still kicking, because I got in the pool all the time, and every summer I was doing sometimes 5 or 6 sessions of swimming a day.
You also taught at first at Howard Drive, did you say?
Yeah, when my 4 kids finally got out of diapers, and my oldest kid was in 6th grade, and we had moved to Pinecrest. All of a sudden, there was a new school 1 year later, and we had to transfer our kids from down there in Pinecrest to go to Howard Drive Elementary School, except George. And that was fine. It was an excellent school, and pretty soon I found that somebody was sick, and so I taught there for a while. And then it got so that there was always somebody sick. And so I continued, taught there for 5 years. And then at the teacher walkout, about 5 years from that time that I had started, I determined to go to Florida Atlantic University because of family connections on the school board, and they wouldn't know whether I should be in or out. I went to there and taught for 1 year. I supervised interns in Dade County, but all of those kids were going up to Boca before FIU was made. So the very next year, FIU was established. So I didn't have to go up there. So I came back and I taught for 5 years plus at Palmetto Senior High School. Americanism versus Communism, a government. And during that time, I took a bunch of kids to Europe, and we also were in debate. We traveled to Washington, D.C. one time with a bunch of kids from Palmetto. They were sharp. And after that, I was the last teacher on the staff when they decided to integrate the schools, okay? So I was transferred to Southwood, and I didn't go there until the 2nd year, and I was there for 5 years. But before I left Pinecrest, before I left the high school, I was chairman of the Human Relations Department.
Of where?
Of the high school. Mm-hmm. And they sort of had jockeyed me into a space that I had not known about. I was on the staff, and it was during the time that the Black Panthers, led from the University of Miami, walked out of our Palmetto Senior High School. And with me was a black woman who was the coordinator between the white and the black community. And she was wonderful. And
you don't remember her name?
Yes, it'll come in a minute. And
she went back and forth between the schools?
She had kids over there in Pinecrest. My kids and her kids were friends, and she lived in South Dade, and her daughter, Dr. Helen McGuire, and I are friends to this day. This lady that I'm talking about, her mother died quite a while ago. But we followed the kids out to see what they were doing and how they were doing it and who was doing it. So, we'd like to forget all of that. But another thing that I did while I was still in that school because there was an integration, and I was going to meetings where you had to check your guns.
This
at the
was
door.
integration of Palmetto High School?
Integration of all Dade County.
All of Dade County.
All of Dade County, yes. And the news leader in South Dade put an ad in the paper challenging anybody, any official on the school board or any of their family to take this walk from I want to say to Bel Air, which was across the highway from it wasn't Frank C. Martin, I can't think of the name. But anyhow, it was in a bad area. There was a liquor store next door. The roads and the sidewalks were terrible. And they figured out nobody would dare go down there. And so I said, well, I'll go down. My husband didn't know. He was on the school board at that time. And so I walked from Frank C. Martin, I'm not sure about that, to Bel Air. And so they gave me $200. And so I bought a water fountain for the kids at that Frank C. Martin. I knew the principal there because she was with me in American Association of University when I was a president. So then they put this obnoxious headline in the newspaper: "Gutsy broad walks down through Blacktown." So
that was in the South Dade News Leader?
Yeah. So I'm famous or infamous, depending on how you look at it.
Did you get a lot of flack because of your husband being on the school board?
Well, no, the flack would have come from the Miami Herald. It would have made a juicy story, no matter what I did. So that's why I went to Florida Atlantic University. So they couldn't have any circus with me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did it get to be a circus, the desegregation?
Oh, it was very hard. It was very hard. Blacks as well as whites didn't want to integrate. They didn't want to go to somebody else's school halfway across town. And you can understand that. So it was a two-way street, actually. But it had to be done because I know when I first came to Miami, I knew that the black schools didn't have good books. They got their books from the white schools after the whites threw them out. And so the upkeep of the property, the upkeep had to change. And I think we made tremendous strides in the school system because of that.
Were you involved as a parent in your children's schools here?
Oh yeah, all of them. Mm-hmm. They all graduated from here, from Pinecrest, from Palmetto Senior High School. I had 1, 2, 3 grandkids that graduated from there because I seem to attract grandkids in this house. And everybody used to play on my front yard. The first thing we did when we moved into this house was to remove a bougainvillea plant that was out on the front porch because that's where the kids were playing football. And to get a prick from one of those bushes is no fun.
So what was the neighborhood like?
Oh, the neighborhood was wonderful. Everybody was young, and everybody had kids, and everybody wanted to know their neighbors. And back then, I remember organizing I think it was a 4th of July parade, and because I had worked my way through college playing bass drum and snare drum. I got a drum set from Palmetto, and the kids were all lined up with their bicycles and everything. But now it's changed 2 or 3 times, I guess. Children have moved in and grown up and moved away, and more children. So I think this is about time for some more children. I guess the average age of people from owners in Pinecrest is about 35. Amazing, because there's still a lot of old folks, like we saw at the Pinecrest Pioneers Luncheon last week.
There are quite a number.
Yeah, it's a good place. It's a wonderful place to live. You couldn't beat it. It's just incredible. The location is fantastic. The government has been fantastic. Cindy Lerner has been fantastic, and we're on the go here.
You taught geography,
among other things.
And that was after the war.
Right, right.
So the geography shifted around a bit and changed a bit.
Well, yeah, I remember having in my class, I always had pictures from the Holocaust, and I taught that well, because I think people need to know so it doesn't happen again. But I don't know, it looks like things are turning down now.
In what way?
Well, there's so much prejudice, and there's not the amount of freedom that we used to know any place. We're afraid to say this, or we are afraid to say that, and I hope that that will change back to being able to do what the Constitution allows us to do without fear of getting shot by some terrorists.
You're talking about freedom of speech.
The First Amendment and the Second Amendment, yeah, and gun control.
You're in favor of gun control or not?
The Constitution has always given us the right to bear arms and protect ourselves and our families. I still believe that's necessary, especially in this time of great consternation, actually. I found that the French, when they were terrorized, did not have any guns, because guns were taboo over there. That can't happen here, as long as we can get a hold of guns. I don't own a gun, but I believe that we should be able to have one if we want one.
What other of your beliefs do you think are a result of the times that you've lived through?
Well, obviously, my Christian beliefs. I go to Old Cutler Presbyterian Church, and it's good news gospel, if you ask me. And God has been very good to me. I'm 92 years old and walking. I'm living on borrowed time, I guess, and I'm in a transition period now. And certainly my mother and father were very good people, good Christians. And so I feel that that's a blessing, because God has blessed me and has blessed my family. And I feel safe.
If you were still teaching in Palmetto High School and you were allowed to speak your piece to a group of students who were willing to sit and listen, what would you like to pass along to them?
I would probably tell them the same thing. The Constitution is a great thing, and it's come out of a history of doing right and believing in the right and sharing life with other people giving back to other people who can't get things for themselves, perhaps, and the goodness of God. I think it's imperative. It's imperative. I think that's the only peace we can ever have, is through the good Lord.
I want to touch a little bit back on school board, because your husband was Holmes Braddock,
Right.
and he has a school named after him.
Right. He does.
He was very respected.
Yes, he was very respected, and I respect him for everything that he did on the school board. He was out there about 34, 38 years. Amazing.
Right. What do you think were some of his major accomplishments that you're aware of?
Well, the integration process. He helped in other places besides Dade County. And,
what other places?
well, I'm not sure he could tell you, but I think it was maybe Boston, someplace north.
In other words, the experience from here he was able to share elsewhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we didn't have any violence, and that's a major thing. If people don't like things, they really go up in arms. And I think more peace can be acquired by talking it out. Confrontation doesn't really get you very far. But sticking to the Constitution, our nation has thrived better than any other nation on earth. And no wonder everybody wants to come here. I can't understand some of the people who might be here and who are terrorized or go across the pond and join forces with ISIS when they have seen how the other people live. They don't want women to have an education. They don't want women to drive a car. I'm a woman, and I think we need that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we stick by the Constitution, we'll do okay.